everybody, welcome to Learn with Steph. This is one of the videos as part of our Lessons in Law series. The focus is on OCR A Level Law, but it will be useful to anybody studying law. If you like the videos, please do subscribe and press the like button at the bottom. Today's lesson in law is one of our introductory lessons. And today's lesson will focus on the law courts. So first of all, let's think about what you might already know. You might know in your town or city that there is a court. You might know what that name of the court is. You may even have visited the court. I strongly advise you to visit courts as part of your experience as a UK citizen, really. And any court, apart from family courts and certain courts that might be what's called in camera, which means they're of a sensitive nature, but pretty much any courts allow the public to visit them and to look at justice in action. It's a very, very important part of our legal system. So do look at your local towns and cities and do take the opportunity to visit a court. Usually they won't let anyone under the age of 14 in there though. Okay, so just some questions for you to think about. Do you know the names of any courts at all? Have you heard of any courts? There's a very famous court in London that's often mentioned in the news. It's located near St Paul's. Can you name it? And what do you think is meant by a hierarchy of courts? A hierarchy. Have a think about those questions for a few moments. Okay, so for the second question, you will no doubt have heard of a court called the Old Bailey. It's located, as I said, near St Paul's Cathedral. And again, it's open to the public. Just be aware, if you do visit the Old Bailey, they don't allow any liquids in there, so you need to not take a bottle of water, let's say, in the court with you. They won't allow electronic devices or large bags or anything like that. But there is a local shop that you can deposit bags at for a quite high fee, to be honest. So that's a very famous statue that's at the top of the Old Bailey. You might remember seeing that on the news. But the London Central Criminal Crown Court, here's some of the really big criminal cases in the UK. And then we've got also another famous court which you often see on the television, on the news, the London Royal Courts of Justice. They're located in the Strand, a very famous street in London. So again, watch out in the news. You might very well have seen that court. It's a beautiful building and you can go in it. The UK High Court is in there, and you've also got the Court of Appeal in that building. And as you go in, there's a beautiful entrance that you see in a lot of films. So again, that court is well worth a visit. And in that court, you can take bags and water, but you will be searched upon entry because it is a very important public building. Many UK towns have their own magistrates' courts. Magistrates' courts were originally set up to provide local justice. Unfortunately, in recent years, a lot have closed. So there are far fewer than there used to be in the UK. But many towns do have a local magistrates' court. And as part of the OCR course, you do learn about magistrates and what happens in a magistrates court. Some UK towns and cities, usually the larger ones, will also have their own Crown Court. And again, that's the sort of court that you would have a judge and a jury sitting on, and perhaps more interesting cases than you might see at a magistrates court. Again, well worth a visit. Okay, so let's look at what our UK courts do. So UK court jurisdiction. And that word jurisdiction is an interesting word in itself, isn't it? It generally means power. So what's the power of these sorts of courts? And today I'm just looking here at which courts are criminal and which courts are civil. And some courts deal with both civil and criminal cases. So looking at the list of courts that I've provided you with, can you work out which ones might be criminal courts, which ones might only deal with civil cases, and which ones can deal with both? Hopefully you managed to work out that the Court of Appeal and the Magistrates Court and the Supreme Court all deal with both types of cases. In fact, the Court of Appeal is divided into two divisions, a criminal division and a civil division. So the same judges don't actually deal with both types of cases. On the OCR A Level course, you don't actually need to know anything in real detail about the magistrate's civil jurisdiction. You're just interested in how it deals with criminal cases. So we're going to pretty much ignore the magistrates as a civil court. And the Supreme Court deals with both types of cases, but it's not divided into two divisions like the Court of Appeal. It's all just one, so the same judges deal with both types of cases. You'll notice that there's only really one main criminal court, the Crown Court. And that's the sort of court that the Old Bailey is. Many towns also have a county court. I'm sure your town probably has one. And then there's the High Court, as I said to you before. The main High Court in the UK is on the Strand in London. And the High Court can sometimes also be a appeal court, and when it is an appeal court, it's called a divisional court. Now, just a quick note here that I've put on your screen. Just be aware that the Queen's Bench Division, part of the High Court, the divisional court, does sometimes deal with criminal appeals from the Magistrates Court. So just be aware of that. Okay, so in the UK, we have what's called a hierarchy of courts. So we have courts, if you like, at the bottom, and we have courts at the top. And it's really important in any study of law that you know the courts in order of the hierarchy. Now, as part of this hierarchy, some of the courts are called appeal courts, and some of the courts are called courts of the first instance. What do you think these terms might mean? Can you identify any of the courts that might be an appeal court or perhaps a first instance court? And you should start thinking about which courts do you think are at the bottom of the hierarchy and which courts are at the top. So Obviously, the Court of Appeal is an appeal court. The other main appeal court in the UK is the Supreme Court. And as I've already said, when the High Court becomes an appeal court, it changes its name and it becomes the Divisional Court. So all of those are appeal courts. So they're the sorts of courts that someone would go to challenge an outcome. So they might challenge a verdict or possibly a sentence or an award. The other courts are called courts of the first instance, and that is where a case would begin. So the magistrate's court is a court at the first instance. The Crown Court is also a court of the first instance, as is a county court and the High Court. So let's have a look at the courts in order. At the bottom of the hierarchy is the Magistrates' Court, and it's an absolutely essential court, particularly for criminal cases. All criminal cases start in the Magistrates' Court, and the great majority of them end there as well. They hear in the Magistrates' Court about 97% of all cases. So now let's just go up the criminal route. So from the Magistrates' Court, you might also go to the Crown Court. So if you were charged with murder, your bail hearing may be in the Magistrates' Court, and then you would be tried in the first instance court, the Crown Court. The appeal court you might go to would be the Court of Appeal, and then you might go to the Supreme Court as the top court. So our highest court is the Supreme Court. Very, very few cases ever go to the Supreme Court. Only cases of the utmost legal importance are likely to end up in the Supreme Court. So looking at the civil route, so as I said, some civil cases do go to the Magistrates' Court, such as debt collecting, that sort of thing. But the main civil court, main first instance civil court, is the County Court. And then there's also the High Court that is divided into 3 divisions: the Chancery Division that looks at money matters, Family Division, and probably the most important High Court court is the Queen's Bench Division. And as I said, sometimes the Queen's Bench Division, when it is a divisional court, an appeal court, does hear appeals from the Magistrates' Court, but only appeals on a point of law. So from the High Court, you could appeal to the Court of Appeal, and then again to the Supreme Court, but again, that hears very, very few cases. And just a reminder, the County Court, if you're appealing to the High Court, the name would change to the Divisional Court. So you need to learn that hierarchy. You need to know that the Magistrates' Court's at the bottom. You need to know that it's the Crown Court that's a criminal court, the County and the High Court are civil, and that the top court is the Supreme Court. And then finally, it's worth knowing who adjudicates in each court. So what's the personnel in each court, particularly on judges? If you look at the names, you can probably work out which court lay magistrates are likely to be found in and which court supreme judges are likely to be found in. Just have a think about which court those judges and magistrates might work in. So hopefully you've worked out that Supreme Court judges work in the Supreme Court and appeal judges work in the Court of Appeal. So these judges are sometimes also called Lady and Lords Justices of Appeal. And then hopefully you've probably worked out that in the High Court we have High Court judges, and then in the Magistrates Court there are lay magistrates. And in a later video we'll talk about what lay magistrates mean and the different roles of the different judges. The difficult one to remember are the district judges and the circuit judges. But there's an easy way of remembering this. So the county court has district judges generally, and the Crown Court has circuit judges. And the way I always remember this is I think of a crown is a circle, it's like a circuit, and a county is a certain district in the UK. So the district judge would work in a county court. And it is worth knowing not only the names of the courts and where they are in the court hierarchy, and whether they are criminal or civil or both, but also who adjudicates in each of them. That brings us to the end of this lesson in law. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like it and subscribe to find more videos. Bye.